gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is At the Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 151. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Seriously, you're already watching the video, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, just subscribe. It helps out a lot. Greatly appreciated. Down in the comment section, let me know, who do you think has been the most impressive rookie? Obviously, most people are going to go to Jaden Daniels or Neighbors. I do think there's some other guys that you could potentially make a case for based on their situation, but want to see who everybody's kind of thinking there. So let me know down in the comments who's the rookie you're most impressed with so far this year. So we're going to be diving into week 5 here. Obviously, this is the first week of bye weeks, so we got a little bit smaller of a slate compared to what we've had previously. 10 games on the slate. We got Philly, the Chargers, and Tennessee all on bye. So we're going to go through this 10-game slate here. Obviously, there's a London game, so shortens up the slate a little bit more. But we're diving into the Sunday main slate, going to go through every single game here, break it down from a fantasy standpoint, a betting standpoint, and more specifically, a DraftKings standpoint. So if we jump into the first game, we have Carolina at Chicago. The total for this game is 42. Chicago 4-point favorites at home. This one, I think there are some pieces you could use. I don't know that I would necessarily want to stack it. Chicago's defense is pretty good. Playing at home, I do think that you could probably make a case that you could play the defense, but I don't know how much I would want to play Dalton stacks, or how heavily I would want to invest in this game. Dalton has looked good, 5,400 for what he's been doing. I think you can make a case for it. As I said, though, I think that this Chicago defense at home probably keeps me away from going there. Hubbard, 6,100, I think is still a good price for the workload that he gets. I do think that you can definitely make a case to go there. And I think he's a good cash game play. And he should probably be a little bit less popular than he was last week now that he's up over $6,000. So I, I think this Chicago defense is pretty good, but I'd probably lean more Hubbard than I would the Dalton side of things in this game. So I do like Hubbard quite a bit. And then obviously Deontay Johnson, 6,100. He's same thing. Just the workload is way too good for him. Back to back catches with back to back 7 catch games. So I mean, getting over 7 receptions in a full point PPR setting is definitely something you like to see. So Dalton's looking for him rather often. He's also scored a touchdown in back to back games, which obviously used to be a bugaboo for him back in the Steelers days. But he didn't practice due to an ankle injury. Now they said it's just maintenance on a Wednesday. So just something to keep in mind there. But I think that's really the only two I would go to on that side are Deontay and Hubbard. Obviously, Xavier Legette didn't exactly look great from an NFL standard. Kind of looked like a rookie out there, but from a fantasy standpoint and a DraftKings standpoint, at 5,100, I think he's talented enough. If you wanted to make a case in large field GPPs, you could go there, but I'd probably prefer him to be a little bit cheaper here, maybe somewhere around 4,600, 48 at most. So probably not going to get there, but if you wanted to make a case for it, I get it. On the Chicago side, I'm not going to play Caleb Williams. That Rams defense is putrid, and the fact that he really couldn't do that much against them, he's had some good matchups. He's shown flashes, so I'm not going to say that Caleb Williams isn't, worthy of the number 1 overall pick yet, or not a NFL caliber quarterback. Obviously, compared to Jaden Daniels, doesn't look great, but I think he's fine. I'm not going to him this week. I'm absolutely not chasing DeAndre Swift. This is a good matchup. 5,700 for him isn't a terrible price. I mean, if he's like sub 3% owned, maybe I would consider it, but probably not going there in any way, shape, or form. And then same thing, DJ Moore at 6,600 is just, he's way too expensive. He should be less than Deontay Johnson for what he's put up so far this year. I get that he has the upside, but now that Keenan Allen is back, the three of these, I'd rather see it kind of how it pans out, because we haven't really seen them all three together fully healthy. Now, the fact they're at home here against the weak defense, it could be a good game, and maybe you do want to go Caleb with two of these guys, but I think you're grasping at straws there, so I'm probably not really going to be willing to go there. Next, we have Baltimore at Cincy. Now this is a game we're going to get some scoring. And speaking of scoring, it was nice to actually see last week. There were some games that actually did have some scoring. So after a couple weeks of basically Army football, we got some good games. And I probably shouldn't even use that reference because Army balled out last week too. But, anyways, you get my point. It's nice to see some scoring finally in the NFL. And we can probably see a good amount of it in this game. Baltimore at Cincy, 50.5 is the total. So this is the first of two games that have a total over 50. Baltimore laying 2.5 points on the road. Now in division, obviously, with the way that they looked, just shellacking the Bills on Sunday night. I do think that they deserve to be the favorite here, maybe even a more heavy favorite. I just don't think that Cincy's defense is going to be able to stop them very much here. Joe Mixon's still not practicing, so sorry, totally wrong game there. Had the wrong note there, but Andrews is who I really want to touch on. Now, this is the cheapest we're probably ever going to see him, or I guess not necessarily next week. He could be in the 3K range, but at 4,000, I do think that you can make a case to play him in large field GPPs. When you have a game that has this high of a total, and Andrews has basically been a glorified left tackle, just they're gonna have to score, and I do still think that he has a little bit of scoring upside. Now, obviously, nowhere near as much as just Lamar or Derrick Henry or even Zay Flowers, but at only 4K, if you wanted to pair Lamar with him and then bring it back on the other side with one of these Cincy guys, I do think that it makes a lot of sense. And maybe it would make more sense if all of a sudden DraftKings was giving you extra bonus points for pancake blocks because, like I said, I mean, Andrews is basically a glorified left or right tackle at this point. So definitely want to see him running some more routes and getting some more passes. He dropped his only target last week. So things are very, very down. But if nobody's going to use him, I think you can actually make a case for it. So that's why I kind of want to open it up there. But obviously, Derrick Henry is a smash play last week. He went absolutely nuclear. 7,800 though is pretty expensive for a guy that doesn't tend to catch a lot of passes. Now, nobody on this team really does. He was second in receptions last week with 3. So you can make a case for it here. Since his defense isn't great, but at 7,800 with the elevated price tag, I want to see if people are going to chase that game that they saw last week. I might stay away from Henry here and just go with Lamar stacks. And I think you can make a case to stack him, like I said, with Andrews or with Zay Flowers, who's 6,400. So that price tag's a little bit high. But my preferred route would probably be just play Lamar naked, and that's it. Or you could actually, I think a way to get different is if this game gets extremely popular, if Lamar and Henry are extremely popular, pair them together. Now, obviously, Lamar's not going to throw Henry a touchdown every week like he did last week, but we could definitely see this team come out here and score four touchdowns, and Lamar is 2 of them and Henry is 2 of them. And I don't think a lot of people will correlate it that way. So that's just a way to get different if this game does get crazy out of control, but that salary does get a little bit out of control too. So just keep that in mind. You'd probably want to find a cheaper piece to pair with them. And the Cincy side isn't exactly cheap. Burrow 6,400 isn't terrible. I played a ton of Burrow last week. Didn't kill me, but it really wasn't great considering I could have just played Jaden Daniels instead. So that did hurt a little bit. But I don't know that I love him. I do think that Baltimore is definitely more susceptible through the air. You can definitely pick them apart through the air. But at this price, there's probably just some other guys that I'd rather go to on the slate. Now watch, he's going to throw for 353, but as of right now, probably staying away from the Burrow stacks, but I am absolutely going to play some of these pass catchers. Jamar Chase 8,000. Like I said, if you're trying to game stack this, it's very appealing. It should be a good game environment, but when you have Lamar and Henry up close to 8K and Jamar is actually 8K, Higgins is 6,000. This can get really, really expensive really, really fast. So I could see people maybe going to Chase Brown after the week that he had last week. He's only 5,600. Zach Moss at 6K. I think they're kind of thin plays because you're similar to Najee and Jalen Warren last year, I don't know if on any given week you're going to know who it's going to be, because we thought Moss was going to be the goal line guy, and then you see what Brown did last week. We thought Brown was going to be the reception guy, and it's been Moss basically playing in the 2 minute drill and third down. So you're kind of grasping at straws there too. So it's very hard to stack this game, but I do think that if you do get it right, it's going to pay off huge this week. Eric All, I think, is in play 2,700. If you did want to go Burrow stacks as a really cheap piece, he's only 2,700. Ran more routes than Gesicki, played about 60% of the snaps last week. So I do think that he's in play here, potentially even for cash. It might be a thin play, but especially for Burrow stacks, I think you can definitely make a case for it if you wanted to double stack and go Chase and all and then bring it back with a Henry. I think that makes sense. If you wanted to maybe go Lamar and Chase and all, I think that's fine because you don't really need all to do all that much to pay off. And him and Chase can still get there without Burrow being needed. So just some thoughts on ways to get a little bit different in that game because I do expect there to be a good amount of scoring in that one. Over 50, I don't know. Maybe if it gets steamed up a little bit more, I might even bet the under on it. Just in division, I could see it being a little bit slower paced and lower scoring than that. But I still do expect it to be one of the higher scoring on the slate. Next, we have Buffalo at Houston. This is another one I definitely think should be it should be pretty high scoring. 47.5 is the total here. Buffalo laying 1 point on the road. Houston hasn't looked incredible this year. I love Buffalo in a bounce back spot. I've already bet them at -1. Josh Allen in his career coming off of losses, and I don't think we've ever seen one that bad. I expect Buffalo to roll here. Now, I could see Houston definitely keeping it close. Buffalo's defense definitely looks susceptible, especially on the ground. As I said, I had the note in the wrong game, but Mixon is still not practicing. So if he can't go, I don't know if I want to keep chasing Akers. I don't think Pierce is going to be back, but you can make a case that it is a good matchup for whoever is playing running back there. Tank Dell returned to practice, so I think from the Houston standpoint, you can definitely play Stroud. He's going to be pretty expensive though at 7,200. So this is another game where if you wanted to stack Stroud, Nico's 7,700. Diggs is just under 7K. Tank Dell will probably be the popular one, 5,400. He's definitely affordable. So Stroud not necessarily being a rushing quarterback, I do think you would probably want to pair him with two of those guys, but it can get expensive quickly. And then I'd rather probably play the Allen side, 7,700. I don't think that there is a clear alpha as far as Buffalo goes. So it makes it hard as far as stacking Allen. But at the same time, like I just said with Lamar, when they're spreading it around and there's no clear alpha, you don't necessarily need to pair him with one of these guys because if he throws 3 touchdowns and they're to 3 different people, then you don't necessarily need the pass catcher. Now, maybe in some large field stuff, some millie maker type stuff, you would probably prefer Kincaid at 5,300. Obviously, Khalil Shakir has been the target guy to this point, but 5,900 is kind of expensive for him. So worry about the upside, but you can pair Allen with some of these guys because they are pretty cheap with Keon Coleman 4,700, Curtis Samuel all the way down at 42, Matt Collins 31. Like I said, I'm not really going to chase too much of it, but I do like Allen here at 7,700. And then similar to what I said with Lamar and Henry, I think you can make a case here to go Allen and James Cook because all of the scoring could go through the two of them. And then you bring it back with a Tank Dell. It's a little bit cheaper than what we just saw in that Baltimore Cincy stack. So just some ways to potentially get different there. But I definitely like Allen. I think I will have some Allen to Nico Collins, and that'll be my exposure to this game. And it's a little bit expensive, but I think there's some other value on the slate that we can find. Or even if you wanted to do just a James Cook and go with Nico or Diggs, I think that makes sense as well. I do expect if Tank Dell is a full go, he probably will garner some ownership just because people are going to be looking for some savings on this. And people always like to play Tank Dell, but Not really chasing too much in this game, but it's definitely a game that I do want pieces of. Next, we have Indy at Jacksonville. This one's a weird one because we still don't know if Anthony Richardson's going to play. He's limited on Wednesday at practice. I think they should hold him out. He obviously looked very hurt on the play where he came out of the game, then came right back in, ran the ball, and almost got his head taken off because he could barely even stand up. So I think they should probably give him the week, maybe even longer, because I honestly think that this offense is better with Joe Flacco. And I know that's kind of crazy to say, but it's the truth. Especially for these pass catchers, if you have Flacco in here, you have Pittman and Downs are absolutely in play at 6K and 5,100. Not just in play, I think they're great plays. Jacksonville's secondary has been horrific. So I really am hoping Flacco plays here, but it looks like it might end up being a game time decision. So it's a little bit concerning from that standpoint. But if Flacco does go at 5,500, I think you can make some stacks with him. You know he's going to throw the ball. You know what to pair him with. It's that simple. Jonathan Taylor going to miss. I don't really love Trey Sermon. I would much rather the Flacco side here. And I think the fact that Taylor can't go, that's all the more reason why, and the matchup that Richardson should sit and they should play Flacco and go with a pass heavy script here against Jacksonville. So hoping for Flacco, I will definitely play some Flacco stacks if he's in there. And then I think you can bring it back with ATN. Obviously, hasn't looked great, but 6,700, he's still getting a good amount of work. I know Bigsby has looked better with one long run here or there. They both are limited with shoulder injuries. So keep an eye on that. If for any reason one of them can't go, the other one probably comes, they're going to be a good play. Ingram might be back practicing on a limited basis, so keep an eye on him. But the price isn't too cheap, 4,600 though. But what we've seen from tight end, that could be a good play if he comes back. But if he can't go, I love Strange at 3,200. Brian Thomas Jr., 5,900, probably a little bit too cheap for his ability, but Lawrence has definitely been holding him back a little bit, but they should absolutely look to get this guy the ball more. It looks like he is open on every single play. You can make a case that he should be getting a neighbors type target share because he is clearly a very talented wide receiver. And Christian Kirk is talented as well, 5,700. I do think he's involved enough that you can play him, but I'd just rather pay up the $200 for Thomas. Gabe Davis is essentially an afterthought in this, and he's a little bit banged up himself. 4,500 if you really wanted to get crazy with a game stack here, maybe you make a case for it, but I think you're just being a little bit too cute there. So I think that you can make a case for Lawrence stacks in larger field stuff and pair him with two of these pass catchers. But my preference here would probably be if Flacco goes, Flacco with Pittman, Josh Downs, bring it back with Brian Thomas, and you're on your way. Or if Ingram can play, I'd be fine going there as well. Next, we have Miami at New England. Now, this is a great game. Obviously, you want to get so many pieces in this. And by so many pieces, I mean literally nobody. I want nothing to do with it. 36.5 is the total. That's gross. New England 1 point favorites at home. It's just Miami is completely broken. Huntley, just it's malpractice the fact that they had to go out and get a guy and now he's there for 2 weeks and he's still your best option at quarterback. That's just pathetic when you have a guy that his career could be over on any snap with Tua, and you didn't prepare for this is just beyond pathetic. I don't know what the hell they're doing. It's just the front office should be completely fired immediately. And just offensively, they're broken. You can make a case for Tyreek Hill. He just missed on a couple long ones the other night, but just at his elevated price tag, I really don't think that you can get there. It's just too expensive to pay up with the other good options we just said. $7,600 for him when you could pay up for Chase or Nico Collins with the way they're playing. I think it's too cute if you're trying to get there. Same goes for Achan, 7,200. Obviously, these guys can pay off on one or two plays, but I just think that this game is just you could play one of the defenses if you want, and that's pretty much it. Next, we have Cleveland at Washington. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, looks like a phenom, 6,800. I will say I'm not a Kingsbury fan in any way, shape, or form, but he has done an incredible job here. Maybe some of it's Dan Quinn as well, but just Daniels, first game just looked like a raw Anthony Richardson type almost. Like, can this guy even throw the ball? And they were throwing short little passes, which really isn't Daniels' game. And just each week they have progressed more and more and opened up the playbook a little bit more for him. And it is doing wonders. So I think that the way they are progressing with Jaden Daniels is definitely a testament to the coaching, and it is definitely unlocking his ability. Now, one thing I will say that might piss some people off here is I could see him failing from a DraftKings standpoint here. Now, obviously, in your season long league, you want to play him every single week going forward. But Cleveland can get some pressure here, and we haven't seen him go up against a great defense yet. Cleveland isn't what they used to be, but they can still generate some pressure here. So he may look to just take off like we've seen, and it's possible they get to him before he can take off. So just something to keep in mind there. If he does get out of control, highly owned, maybe you can make a case to go elsewhere. Now, this is coming from a guy that last week talked himself into completely fading Jaden Daniels and going 40% Kyler Murray. I still stand by. I think the matchup and the situation actually made sense with how high Daniels was going to be owned. But obviously, the result did not work out for me at all because Daniels balled out. Murray looked like a shell of himself. So I just, I do think from a contrarian standpoint, you could see Daniels potentially just not take a huge step back, but maybe not pay off this 6,800 price tag compared to some of the guys that we have above him. Just something to keep in mind here, but still, he should be a pretty solid play. You would probably want to pair him with McLaurin, but 6,100 is a little bit expensive. So just keep that in mind. Ertz 3,800. Ertz is what Ertz is. You know, he's going to be involved. Doesn't really offer much upside, but neither does any tight end. So probably you would want to go there from a passing standpoint on the Washington side. Now, Brian Robinson didn't practice Wednesday with a knee injury, so definitely want to keep an eye on that. Eckler was limited, still in concussion protocol. So how this backfield pans out, if neither of them can play, then I'd probably want to play Daniels all that more. But Jeremy McNichols looked good last week. So if for some reason one of those two are out, or if both of them are out, I mean, McNichols becomes uber chalk if they're both out. But if one of them are out, I definitely think you would want to look that way. Only 4,600 for how involved he was last week and how he looked. I definitely think he would be in play. I would love for Robinson to be out and Eckler to be back. Eckler at 5,600 with the game that we saw him have when he got the concussion. He doesn't look like vintage Eckler, but he definitely looks a lot better than he did last year when he was banged up with the Chargers. So I would have some interest there in the backfield, and it could be some leverage off of some Jaden Daniels. Now, on the Cleveland side, it's really hard to make any cases here for Watson stacks. He's only 5,300, so maybe he can pay that off. But for me, it would just be Amari Cooper, 6,200. I do think that this Washington secondary is pathetic. Obviously, Cooper had that long touchdown called back last week on a bullshit holding call. So I think he's absolutely in play here at 6,200, and something to keep an eye on. Njoku actually returned on a limited basis to practice. Don't know if we can expect him back here, but this game, 43.5 is the total. Washington 3.5 at home. I think you can make a case for some pieces here, and obviously people are going to play the Daniel side, but definitely want to keep an eye on that Washington backfield and monitor that because that could really determine how this slate goes. Next, we have going into the late window, kind of like this year. We got 6 games in the early, 4 in the late, so not split down the middle, but pretty close. So definitely like that. We have Vegas at Denver. This is going to be another one. Just stay away. Just stay away. There's nothing you need to chase here. The quarterbacks are cheap, but who are you going to pair them with? They really haven't looked good at all. The backfield for Las Vegas is an absolute disaster. You would think Bowers would be a lot more heavily targeted at 5,500 with no Devontae Adams, but I don't know. I'm not going to chase that there. And then basically the only person that's even playable on the Denver side is Cortland Sutton, but I don't think you can trust Knicks enough. 5,500, the price isn't terrible. So those would probably be the only two that I would even consider. And then same thing, you can play the defenses similar to that New England Miami game. Next, we have a pretty good one here in division, Arizona at San Francisco. 49.5 is the total here. So I said there was two games over 50. This one came down a half a point. So 49.5, though, pretty high. San Francisco 7-point favorites at home. San Francisco has the highest team implied total on the slate, just under 30 points. So they're expecting them to roll. Obviously, with what Jaden Daniels did to this Arizona defense last week, can definitely see it here. So Purdy stacks are absolutely in play, 6,200. Jordan Mason price is elevated up here at 7,400, but he's still getting the McCaffrey workload. So I'm sure as his price goes up, his ownership will come down. So he's definitely still a good play because his touchdown upside is pretty high with this team implied total. Debo, 6,800, great price for him. I would love Purdy, Debo, Kittle stacks probably. Ayuk is probably going to go overlooked here. Just hasn't looked good. I don't know if it's the money. I don't know if it's sitting out the preseason, if he's going to get it going. So you can definitely make a case that he's probably a good GPP play because, as I said, team implied total. If you want to go with Purdy stacks and stack him with Ayuk, probably not a lot of people are going to be doing that. 6,300, not a terrible price, but Jawan Jennings has looked better than him, and it's really crazy. I'm like I said, I don't know if it's the money. I don't know if he's just disinterested. I'm not sure what it is, but he has not looked good. I would definitely rather go to Debo. I think you can make a case for a Debo Mason, just stack it and be on your way there. Now, maybe they cannibalize each other a little bit from a touchdown standpoint, but you can definitely see Mason get two short yardage ones and Debo can score from anywhere on the field. So, do like that. Kittle's a little bit banged up as he always is, but he's got a rib issue. So, 5,600 for him. Definitely keep an eye on that. And then if San Francisco is going to score that many points, it's going to force Arizona to have to try and play keep up here. I don't really love Connor the workload for $6,500 on DraftKings. I think you could definitely make a case that it makes sense there, but I'd much rather Kyler here, expecting them, 7 point underdogs on the road. So 6,700 for Kyler should definitely run more than he did last week. I don't know what the hell that was all about. And obviously, you know who to pair him with. You pair him with Marvin Harrison. McBride could potentially be back here. So if you wanted to just go with Kyler to McBride, maybe bring it back with a Debo or a Mason, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then if you're looking for salary savings, Dortch is always heavily involved. Michael Wilson has a chance at a touchdown. So you can make a case for them in game stacks or more specifically Kyler stacks, but definitely want pieces of this 49ers offense this week, and we'll pick and choose my spots with bringing it back or going with some Kyler stacks there as well. Next we have Green Bay at the Rams. So Love came back, obviously looked a little bit shaky at first, but was able to get it back together in what was kind of garbage time, but they made it pretty close at the end. So Green Bay's laying 3 points on the road here. 48.5 is the total. So do expect some points to be scored in this game. And I do like Love quite a bit here. Obviously, the Rams secondary is not good whatsoever. With Christian Watson out, it's a little bit more condensed of a target tree for Green Bay. Jaden Reed, 6,500, I think is a great play with Love or standalone. He is just incredibly heavily involved. He is a great athlete, good after the catch. I love what he's been doing. So 6,500, I think, is a great price for him. Romeo Dobbs, nobody's going to play. 5,400 is actually a pretty good price for him. I do think he has a little bit of touchdown upside. So if you wanted to go there, that's fine. And then Dontavian Wicks, obviously the hot waiver wire pickup after the week that he had last week. Keep in mind, a lot of it was volume. They're not going to have to throw the ball 60 times every week. But with how terrible this Rams defense is and a condensed target tree, you could definitely make a case to go there. I just want to see what Wicks's ownership is, because if he's out of control at 5K, I think you can make a case to go elsewhere in some tournaments, because we see it all the time. Even the best wide receivers in football can fall on their face from time to time. So very interested to see what his ownership's going to be. But you can definitely make a case for those three guys. Looks like Musgrave is an afterthought in this offense. So Tucker Craft 3,500 if you wanted to go there, that's fine in love stacks. And then on the Ram side, Kyron Williams 7,600, pretty expensive, but they are basically running this guy into the ground. He's going to get the ball pretty much all the time, all the running back touches. So can definitely make a case for that. You know the touchdown upside that he has. I will touch on Josh Jacobs 6,400 hasn't looked great, but the Rams defense hasn't looked great. If love stacks do end up getting very popular, I think Jacobs makes a really good contrarian play this week. So just something to keep in mind there. If I'm chasing the pass catchers for the Rams, it's probably Whittington 4,600. We saw him a lot more involved last week. Obviously, he's you know, new to this offense. So seeing him getting more involved as the week goes on, I definitely think makes a lot of sense, especially when he's playing the Cup role. So as long as Cup is out, he would probably be my preferred pass catcher from the Rams. Demarcus Robinson's a little bit banged up. If he can't go, I would have some interest in maybe Tyler Johnson or Tutu Atwell, but as of right now, it's probably just Whittington for me and Parkinson at 3,700. Just tight ends, you can make a case basically for any of them at this point. Next, we have the Giants at Seattle. Obviously, the Giants coming off of should be pretty well rested playing on Thursday, and Seattle coming off the short week. But 43.5 is the total in this one. Seattle 6-point favorites at home. Neighbors, Dayball said he's still in the early stages of concussion protocol. That's not good. They have 10 full days from their last game, and he's still only in the early stages. So 10 days before this next game on Sunday, and he still might not be ready. So that kind of sucks. And it sucks for this game. It sucks for the Giants. And then Singletary didn't practice today with a groin injury. So that comes up out of nowhere too. If the two of them can't go, I would very much be interested in betting Seattle here. And actually the fact that those two aren't even practicing, we could see this spread inflated quite a bit. So if you like the 6, you might even want to get in on it now. If Singletary can't go, Tyrone Tracy is only 4,300. That is basically a free square in cash and has actually looked good at times. So do like him quite a bit. I think you could probably play him in some GPPs as well. 4,300 for a starting running back is definitely good. But Eric Gray would definitely be involved as well. So from a tournament standpoint, if everybody's going to Tracy, Gray's got a little bit of wiggle and a little bit of big play upside. So maybe you can make a case there for larger field stuff. I do like Geno Stacks quite a bit. Obviously, you would want the Giants to be able to keep up a little bit for it to really pay off, but 5,900 I think is a great price for him. With the week Kenneth Walker had, just people are going to want to go there at 6,800. So if he gets popular, I think going with the Geno side actually makes a lot of sense. I do like Kenneth Walker. He will absolutely be in my player pool, but I do like Stacks also. DK 7K is absolutely affordable. JSN at 5,800. Lockett's only 5,200. Now I know those other two have a little bit more of an upside, but we could definitely see Lockett pay off here at only 5,200 if you wanted to go with Geno and any two of them. I think that's a great stack this week. Not going to chase Fant, as I said, with tight end. If you're playing Geno stacks and that's where you wanted to go just to fill out your tight end spot, that's fine, but really not too crazy about it. Wandale Robinson also a little bit banged up, 5,600. The price is just a little too high for what he offers. He could have 12 catches, but that'll probably result in 9 yards. That sounds about right. That might even be a little bit too much there, but I'm not crazy about that. If Neighbors can't go, maybe Slayton 3,900 or Jalen Hyatt at 3,100. If Neighbors is in play here, I think you can make a case for Daniel Jones, but his time might be limited. Honestly, just he hasn't been terrible, but I don't think that he is the future of this team, and I could see if they end up just being the season is lost, them at some point turning to Drew Lock just to see if they have something with Drew Lock. Because if you already know that Jones isn't it, despite the fact that you're paying him that much money, it might make sense from an organizational standpoint to just see what you have in Drew Lock. And he wasn't great prior, but you don't know what he's going to be like on your organization. And if it's already a lost season, it's just something to keep in mind. But if Neighbors can go, I would consider Daniel Jones stacks. He actually hasn't looked terrible as a thrower this year. Actually, his on target percentage, oddly enough, is highest in the league, which is insane because that's not just Neighbors catching everything. That's not completion percentage. That's throwing the ball on target. And Daniel Jones leads the NFL. Mind blowing. But anyways, it's probably more so the Geno side for me, and then Geno stacks and maybe a Charbonnet. And if one of these running backs comes into play, obviously Tracy would be the preferred one there. In larger field stuff, if you wanted to play a cheap Giants wide receiver, I think that could make sense. But that's pretty much all we're looking at. As I said, condensed slate this week. There are some spots where we can definitely get to some good game totals and game environments there, but it's very expensive. There's not a lot of value, so I do expect a Wix and just if anything else opens up cheap wise, those cheap guys are probably going to be pretty high up there in ownership this week. So just keep an eye on that. But that's going to do it for this week. Just a couple housekeeping things. So going forward, I will no longer be writing my Thursday showdown breakdown. It's just during the week I'm working 50 hours a week and then coming home and taking care of the kids and making sure they're doing their homework and practices and all that fun stuff. So it's just way too time consuming during the week to be able to break down the Thursday night. I want to put all my efforts into this show, the podcast, and might actually be doing a Friday night podcast where I just do a quick 15-20 minutes and go out with some of my favorite bets. So going to be focusing more on the podcast. I will still have my cash game write-ups for yards per fantasy and the helmsports.com. So definitely check that out. And then going forward, if you want my tournament takes for DraftKings, basically you'll get them all here or the madlabmma.com. I will have my write up, behind the paywall over there each Sunday. Contrarian corner, ways we can get different, all that good stuff. And obviously, all my bets go right into the Discord the second I make them. But thank you, everyone, for all the support of everything I do, whether it be writing or this podcast. Again, hit the like button, subscribe, goes a long way. Greatly appreciated. But that's going to do it for this week. As always, thank you for listening. I am your host, Derek Helm. And remember,
Just have fun out there.